welcome to another exciting episode of A Legend Talks. I am one of your hosts, Michael Bowie.
And I am Emmanuel Pierce.
And
But
we,
soon I will be changing into Reporter E.
I hope not. God forbid. Just put that down. I got a glare behind me. But we're gonna jump right into it. And I forgot my book upstairs, so hopefully you have yours, just in case anything I get wrong in terms of the chapter. Is it chapter 11?
I got my copy up.
Okay, so I think it's chapter 11 for this chapter, and it's called.
Yeah, don't make Wayne Brady. Don't make does Wayne Brady got a snap
This new chapter is called the New Edition. Not the group, not the singing group, just or the newest edition. And this is inside the remaster. If you have the original book, chapter 11 is something completely different. I added 50,000 other words, so that's almost like 5, 6 new chapters. So I had to. I think there's about 5 or 6 new names of chapters inside the remaster compared to the original, and this is one of them. It's really just spreading out the information versus me having had made some of the chapters longer than to separate those into two separate chapters, versus to have one that has like 20,000 words in it or 10,000 words in it, to kind of separate them. So this chapter, compared to the original, is basically the point inside of the story where now this is after a Resistance Reborn, which was the last episode, last chapter, last big chapter before the bye chapter, where they're kind of now having to find new members for, and he has a pen. Here we go. To find new members to be a part of this resistance. And Samuel and Jesse are out and about, looking for people, and they hear a cry out for help. A woman's voice and a man's voice, and they go into this alley, and they're looking over a dumpster or wherever they are in the alley, and they notice that this man and woman are being harassed by thugs, and the woman's being raped, and the man is helpless, and he's being assaulted, and Jesse and Samuel want to help these individuals, and they create a diversion and everything, and they end up saving this couple and bringing them in and making them a part of their already small team of just Samuel, Jesse, and Justin, and raising that to a point where now they have 5 people, 2 new people, who are kind of on the fence. Should they be a part of this group? Should they not be a part of this group? But they are thankful for being saved. And that's where you are introduced to 2 new characters, being Stacy and Carter, her husband Carter. And
does Wayne Brady have the snap?
what? What are you on?
What was you on when you wrote this?
It definitely is an intense scene. I mean, you see the marital conflict between the two of them. You see a lot of the trials and tribulations. Carter obviously has a lot going on in his mind, because it's not just that the world's going chaotic, it's that he has a new nephew that's going to be brought into the world by his sister, who's pregnant, about to give birth to a baby, and he wants to see her, he wants to help her, he wants to be close to her. They have a close bond and relationship, and he wants to be a part of that life. So he kind of talked them into going out and saving them, bringing them so that they have that safety and that shelter, and everything. So they travel across town at nighttime. That's when it's the safest, which is kind of weird. I kind of want to talk about that at some point, that it seems like they find traveling at nighttime to be safest, but that's the point where you are at a risk of being killed if you're out past the curfew.
Yeah,
but it's also
Ryder. What's the method behind the madness here?
so when I think about it, the reason why I put it is I do see that is the safest point, because when you're out during the daytime, you got the military and all the fucking hooligans out there doing shit. The military is just patrolling the streets. You can sneak past them. You don't have to worry about being robbed, mugged, shot, called out, or whatever along the way by those other wrongdoers and people committing crimes. You just have the military to worry about, and you have cover. You're clear as day during the daytime, but when it's darker, you have a little bit more to hide in the shadows of darkness. So to me, I could see it does make sense, but at the same point, it's like that's a huge fucking risk. But it's a risk during the daytime. You're not safe anytime, And that's no comparison to daytime. You can get robbed in the daytime just as easily as you can get robbed during the nighttime.
Yeah, but the nighttime is the time where you're not supposed to be out. You know, there is a curfew. So you're breaking an additional rule, thereby placing yourself in even more danger.
Okay, well, sometimes to go places you've never been, you have to do things you've never done. Some things are a risk. You have to take risks. You can never go anywhere. You can never be somebody that elevates to exchange playing by the rules. Sometimes rules are meant to be broken. And I'm giving you all kinds of quotes that should be guidelines to proving that I think it does make sense. Like it's questioned, but in the same point is if I had to do it, what would you do? Would you go during the daytime? Would you go during the nighttime? Honestly, if you were in that
during the day, because then I don't have to worry about the soldiers being on my back. The soldiers are really the main problem.
So you're gonna cross town with all these people that possibly will rob you along the way, stab you along the way.
Well, you acting like they not packing no heat. Like they just walking out with nothing on them.
Well, guns are no more. The guns are no more. They could have a weapon. You're right, but it's no weapon.
Jesse be having weapons on him. That's number one. They don't got a gun. That's why they pack. In jail they say knives is packing. So they got something on them for protection.
Here's the
Jesse
thing:
is a whole police officer.
Anything's a weapon. Anything's a weapon. And to tell you the truth, your fists are a weapon. He's trained how to make those weapons.
What, Jesse's a whole police officer. So
FBI agent.
I think if somebody wants to try him, I think it'll work out very well. So I would say we go through the day.
I mean, you could be a police officer, but what if you came across Ronda Rousey on the streets? You probably gonna get fucked up. I don't care what kind of training you got.
Ronda Rousey can only fight on the ground. She can't throw no hands.
Oh no, she'll fuck a guy up for sure.
No, she can't throw no hands.
No, okay, you go tell her that. Tell her that.
Ask Holly Holm and Amanda.
Tell her that, and you're gonna have a different face that's unrecognizable here on A Legend Talks.
Yeah. So but it's that time in the show for the segment.
No, we don't have any. I'm sorry. We don't have any segments here on the show. There's no segments. There's nothing called Reporter E that I did. I get any memo? There's no memo here, and we're gonna go with this. All right, here we go.
Answer our questions. It's really important that we get this question answered for the people out there. So, without further ado, if you're ready, we're ready to just go ahead and dive in. So, first question is, there seems to be a lot of relationship juxtaposition in this. Not just on a friendship level, but also on a marital level as well. So can you talk about those? I feel like this whole chapter is really just relationships kind of falling apart.
Okay, so first of all, there's no segments. Number two, I'll just answer the question that each chapter, every chapter, the entire story is filled with nothing but messages and relevancies to things that we endure as people every day. Problems, things that we need to evaluate and open our eyes to. And I think that relationships is one of those, especially living inside of a nation where we have like the highest divorce rate. And there's so many people that can't handle a relationship and break up. Love is not what it used to be. Relationships is not what it used to be. There are so many different things that need to be evaluated from a human perspective, from male and from female, on how to fix some of those issues and make those better. And a lot of times people do shitty things and don't realize from, in a relationship standpoint, and don't realize I'm part of the problem. It's always them pointing the finger at the other person. And I actually put this into a poll, because I did a lot of research and asked a lot of people, asked a lot of questions. Did my own kind of reporter, Mike. Did my own little reporter, Mike, to try and evaluate some of these things that happen. And I asked a lot of people, like, hey, your longest relationship that didn't work out, that ended inside of a breakup, who was the person at fault? And I would ask the male, oh, it was the female's fault. I would ask the female, oh, it was the male's fault. Everyone's pointing the finger and not taking really accountability for being apart. If it's a partnership, if it takes two in order to have a baby, it takes two in order to be in a relationship, then it takes two that fucked up for it to end. It doesn't matter if the guy cheated, because there's a lot of people that are in relationships where they cheated and they stayed together. So there's really no and I'm just using cheating as an example to the highest extent. But
no cheating here.
There was no cheating here. But there are marital problems. There is arguments and disagreements and not listening and all that other jazz that really just needs to be evaluated. You can't really tell every single story. And this, to go inside of a cheating aspect inside of a legend story, just takes a legend story inside of a different pathway than what it regularly was intended. So I kept those relationship issues down to a generalized point of view. Now, before you get to your other stupid reporter questions, I'm going to go ahead and just finish the synopsis of the story. So they go to visit the sister, who's also a new character with the doctor that's there, who's also has the baby on the way and everything. And, they're trying to... fuck are you doing? I'm sorry. Did you just leave during a live stream of this show? A live stream. Is this really happening right now? So I'm just supposed to continue this whole show while you're not here. You know what? Fuck it. I'm just waiting. This is a live show. I don't know what he's doing. He's unprofessional, pretty much not just on Filmatic, but also here on the Legend Talk. So I'm going to continue. So it's to a point where they go and visit the sister, and they try and convince her, and she's not having it. She's somebody where it's just like, things will get better. I'm not going to run and hide. It's too much of a risk to be traveling around town, and I'm about to give birth to a kid. Oh, welcome back. Welcome fucking back to the goddamn live show that we're doing here. Okay.
I had to go get...
I don't give a fuck what you had to go get. I don't care. Literally, I'm going to have Ronda Rousey beat your ass. Anyway, here we go.
Wait.
So yeah, they didn't get a chance to really convince her about doing this, about moving, because of all the situations she thought was just not beneficial to her and the health and safety of her child. So she ended up staying. Long story short, even though, I guess it doesn't matter. This is a spoiler show. She dies. She gets killed. Staying there inside of that world. And that goes to a lot of different messages. You talk about, the decisions that I make, and I talk about the values and messages that I put in there. We all make decisions that we kind of have to live with. And so you have to ask yourself, and she has to ask herself, if she would have stayed, if she would have left, would things have been different? Obviously, staying left her inside of a situation where she died. And that kind of set Carter off, because he has to blame somebody, so he blames his wife. He blames, what in the fuck are you doing? What are you...
I'm acting out Carter.
I get it. I guess. So, yeah, he's a little pissed off. He has to blame somebody, and he takes his rage and frustration out on everybody. And so he's kicked out of the team. This team of quickly becoming 5 quickly became 4. And he was just no more. He was no more a part of the team, and Stacy stayed.
Skip past the part where he backhands his wife.
Okay. So you're telling me domestic violence doesn't happen in the everyday world?
Domestic violence does happen, but you just were like, and so he just kicked off the team.
I said he took his anger out on everybody. Do I need to tell every nook and cranny?
He committed domestic violence. He took his anger out differently on different people.
Okay, he did. There are people in the world that are like that.
He told Jesse to get him off him, but he backhands his wife.
It was about to get real with Jesse. I believe.
About to, but see, he didn't step in that lane. But he backhands his wife. Okay.
Stuff happens. So, any follow-up questions just based on the story?
Yes.
The things that. Oh, okay.
I had to go get my reporter hat. Reporter heat here. Again, coming live from E-News.
No, it's not a thing, people. It's not a thing. It's not a thing.
We kind of talked about the relationships aspect of this chapter. Now I kind of want to talk about this and maybe do a juxtaposition from the other side, right? And so,
is there a question coming?
Who's the reporter?
Clearly not you.
Our main character is briefly in this.
Stuttering Stanley here. Keep going.
our main character is briefly in this chapter, and again, his relationship is falling off with his supposed best friend, and he's saying a lot of hurtful and mean stuff, and you kind of write it in a way that they're kind of growing apart, and so it leads to a question of you know are you trying to convey the message that the world has a way of drawing us away from our closest friends and changing our attitudes, or is it the things that we do and the circumstances around us?
Here's the thing. You ask me these kind of proposed questions where, am I trying to do this and am I trying to do that? I'm telling a story. Mm-hmm. What people get out of it is what people get out of it. I can't say to you, this was my end game to show this. My end game was to propose what commonly happens amongst all kinds of different situations amongst people that they need to change, exploiting.
I'm sorry.
Exploiting.
Just with a little less attitude, just for your news cameras. That's all.
Oh, okay, a little less attitude. Okay, I got you. Exploiting their flaws and ignorance and arrogances that they might have, their stupidity and problems that need to be solved. And some of them solve it and some of them don't. And at the end of the day, if it leads to domestic violence, if it leads to death, if it leads to this and that, it's a way to put out, this is what you do. This is what your significant other does. This is a common thing that happens. And then fill that situation with quotes and messages and morals and values and things that are said to kind of hint towards you should do better, you can do this differently, you should do this instead. That's all I'm doing. There's no end goal of let me portray this particular kind of thing.
Did you find the development of these characters particularly challenging? Coming from that perspective, then.
Not really, because, like I said, I pick out a particular thing, and I didn't know what direction it would go in. I would say, all right, so they're going to come across a couple, and the couple, they're having problems. All right, so let's find out what problems they have. So whatever situations they had to speak. And that's kind of the difference when you're writing a book, is because you're writing what's happening, you're also writing what's being said. And the challenge for me that I've now, I think, perfected, and then I don't know if other writers have this issue, but if they don't, and maybe they have a ghostwriter, they do it differently where there's not a lot of verbalized thoughts that are written down, is you have to speak how those individuals would speak. You would have to put yourself into that character. So every time they said something, it had to come across as this is how Carter speaks, this is how he talks, this is how he feels, this is his thoughts, this is what he's going through. When he's saying shit, this is Carter. You can't just put words onto a paper. It has to be that person actually speaking. And so, to answer your question in terms of was it hard to kind of build that, each of these characters, their personas and what they're going through, I would say yes and no. I think that once you have a generalized perception on who are these people, then you're building that based on their situations. You can look at their backstory. You can give them a little bit of backstory, and that may be of some assistance, and I did do that for some characters. But I didn't invest a lot of time. Everybody has their story, and I could definitely write books. Some people say that I should write a book about this other character that will be coming up very soon, the female character inside the story that a lot of people that I've talked to loved. But I could do maybe their own book for Stacy and their own book for Carter and tell their story and everything that they went through. And right now, in my head right now, even though I can do those books, I don't know what their backstory is completely, where they came from and how to build them. I just know he's a husband who's in a relationship with somebody that's not going well and has anger issues and is abusive.
Right.
Where that came from, how that developed, it's not talked about, it's not needed. I didn't think about it in order to develop this character and kind of do it from that aspect. But I think that, and I kind of ask you, do you feel that you got a good perception about each character, or did you think that you needed more? Not just for Stacy and Carter, but for anyone.
Doesn't really answer questions.
Okay, guess what? Again, there's no segment called Reporter E on this show.
Put a pin in that one.
Okay.
We'll come back to it.
We're not going to come back to it. We're going to evaluate it right now.
No, we will come back.
We will evaluate right now because I will keep bringing it up. I will stop everything until we evaluate what you think.
What I think is you need to evaluate it after I'm done asking.
No, you would not. You would answer your damn question. You answer my damn questions before I answer.
I don't remember what your question was now.
I'm trying to think now too. Okay, so what it was do you think that the character development on them was that you needed more at a point where you needed more, or did you get enough? Not just for those two new characters, but for all characters so far.
I mean, Jesse is still being fleshed out, so I think we're in the middle of his character development. The same with Samuel, and the same with Justin. All those people are still being fleshed out. I mean, we still got a bunch of chapters left to go. We still got a whole another 2 books. So, I feel like the groundworks of those are being laid. It's just like anything else. The groundwork has to be put in before you can just kind of spring different things in there. So we're putting in the groundwork. But that leads me to my next question. So you say you didn't know. Do you think from a personal level any of your personal thoughts or ideas crept into your development of the characters?
Oh, that's actually a really good question, and I would say yes, I do. And here's why. I spend a lot of time. I'm one of those individuals who overanalyzes, watches things a lot, and spend a lot of time looking at the things that create negativity or hatred and problems and say, well, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do things differently. So I spent a majority, if not my whole life, trying not to do the things that I see every other person and that I have come across do. The things that have created conflict and problems and hatreds and fights and whatever else. Well, maybe if they don't do this, then that fight wouldn't have happened, or that argument wouldn't have happened, or that divorce wouldn't have happened. So I'm never, ever in my life going to do that. I spent my entire life building around all of these different things to try and become the perfect kind of person that I can be. No different than anybody that tries to go to church every day to try and become the best Christian or whatever the case may be. And so I have a certain insight and outlook on how we should act. And I think that what's funny is that whereas we are all different, we do shit the same. Like, I don't know how to describe that or explain it. It's like we react the same. Like, we get upset at the same kind of stupid, petty shit. We respond and get the exact same in some capacity to things that happen. We let certain things get to us, and we can't really change it or mold it. I mean, we can, but we choose not to because we think it's the norm. And we have the ability to, and I have gotten to that point. I think other people can. So if I can put out how you can do that, I don't think they'll listen to it. I don't think it will change them. So yeah, I'm putting many of my personalized opinions on how you can do that into this book series. Yes.
So moving into my next question, can you talk about the decision to not, because you kind of have, you developed that story, which is what I was going between John and Jesse. What was behind the decision to not have John be in the Resistance currently?
That's a good question too. I'm kind of liking this report. No, I'm not. I'm not liking this report. That is really a good question, and like always, every book has a rising action and a climax and a conflict, and it just makes.
Here's the thing. I think just knowing the background of the story, and we're not going to spoil the rest of the chapters right now. You could have probably still had him join and still had, kind of sort of the same.
If I would have done that, then Reporter E probably would have also said, why did you have him going through that while he was going through the shit he was already going through? Why should he join? He's going through some of the toughest times of his life than to worry about other people. He lost his entire family. And so to me, it makes sense. And it doesn't matter which route I went. Okay, Carter is an abuser. He's not an abuser. Oh, Samuel's old. No, he's young. No, Justin is a good kid. No, he's a bad kid. It doesn't matter. I could do the flip opposite of all of these different things. But in my opinion, John was going through too much. And it would have created a better story to try and build him up to getting away from the grief of losing his family, and then another story to build him up to helping out. He was the best agent or police officer, or FBI agent to kind of counteract the military and fight back for this actiony kind of storyline. And so for him to get to that point, he had to overcome his first hill and then overcome the second one.
It's hard for me dealing with the characters, especially. I'll say this. We do a film review show called Filmatic. Check it out if you ever get a chance. A lot of movies we see, just kind of taking it to kind of just a story angle. When the main character kind of suffers grief, they get into an action mode. They don't spend a lot of time grieving, and I feel like he went the opposite way of. And I'm not saying that this is bad. I feel like you went the opposite way of kind of what that overarching kind of narrative is on someone's grief, especially in this action kind of story, right? Where they kind of just seek revenge. Instead, you decide to make him deal with his grief. And so I guess that's the kind of point that I'm getting at, because you're kind of diverting from what would be a generalized move.
Well, to be different and be unique, you have to be someone that gets away from the generalized thing, and also looking at it from a movie perspective to a book. A book's more in depth and in tune. So you got 2 hours. You don't want to spend a lot of time on his grief aspect. You want to spend more time on the revenge aspect. It doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen. It's just you didn't have the time to explain unless you got a Zack Snyder cut. So.
But even in some books, let's talk about some of the books that I've read. Even in some of these action books that I've read, they don't. The grief doesn't stop them. It's not just a movie thing. I feel like that's a trope in that action area, book, movie, comic book. I feel like that is the general trope that a lot of people don't break from, where the hero, whoever that is, or the protagonist, they'll have something bad to them. Their grief will be slight, and then they'll jump right into getting their revenge. And the Resistance could have easily been John's tool for that, which is kind of where I was coming from with that question. So for you to do something that's different, I'm sure there was a reason behind that.
Like I said, I mean, more or less, looking at how this story started, and I think I talked about it, and if I didn't, I'll recap it, because now I'm starting to think that I don't think I talked about how the concept came about, how it was just a small little dream of people fighting inside of an alley as a way for me to fall asleep, because I was up taking many classes and not getting any sleep, and to dream this up and pretend I was the hero fighting.
Playing Call of Duty.
Pretending I was the hero fighting created this whole concept in general. And so there is no rhyme or reason. It's just telling a story. It's my first book. And I don't think there's a formula to how you do it. The more unique it is, the better of a vision that you create, because now you become the standard that everyone else is going to try and copy when you have this uniqueness. So I think to get away from the generalized version of what everybody else is doing and expand on that, and especially grief. I mean, the whole book deals with death, and grief is associated with death. Let's talk about that. A lot of people are scared to talk about death, and I would hate to use you as an example, but we've talked about it on this show, how you really don't want to think about certain things when it comes to death, and it's inevitable. I don't want to think about it either, but we deal with death differently. We respond to death differently. We think about death differently. There are some people, you can call them your gangsters and your thugs, that they think it's good. Let's kill somebody else first before they kill us. And that's the mentality. And then there's the people that are sorry if that side loses, that they lost somebody that had value to them and other people that loved them. Death is just a unique thing, and grief is something where, coming from me as an entertainer, as a comic, I have a different way of dealing with grief, and that's through laughing. That's through making jokes. Where other people have it, probably through laughing. They may get upset. Oh, don't talk about somebody that was shot. Don't talk about somebody that committed suicide. Don't talk about somebody that was murdered. Don't talk about somebody who died from cancer or some type of disease, because I have a family member or a loved one. You say what?
Don't tell people that someone John Wick their dog. Don't do that.
Comedy. I grieve through comedy, and actually a lot of people do. If you do it in a tasteful, demeanor. I think it just becomes on how PC or sensitive somebody is to being receptive to dealing with that. And as an offensive comic, my goal is to see where that line lays. And if we're being honest, I think that I have tested that line many times in my life, and very few times has it been like, okay, maybe that was too far, or maybe they were just too sensitive.
Well, this leads to my next question. I feel like this chapter is very linear in the grief aspect because on one end you got John dealing with his grief, Jesse on his end is dealing with his grief, and then we get to Carter and Stacy. And after Carter leaves her, she's now dealing with her grief, and her and Jesse kind of have sort of a similar conversation that him and John has, and it kind of touches on that everybody deals with it differently. Where she's like, I don't know how long it's going to take me to get over this, but this is something that I need to deal with. So I would say that you played that out, and was it a point to kind of make the story linear and kind of show everybody dealing with grief in that different way?
Well, here's the thing: is every story, most stories, not every story, because that's the saying, not every story has a happy ending. Most stories have a happy ending, so they have to have an unhappy story before you get to that happy ending. Or if it's one of those very few where it's an unhappy ending, this was one of them. It had a happy ending. But well, I'm thinking about Endgame in general. Like they come back. You're talking just up to that point. Okay, well I got you. That was a little messed up. Anyway, I think that this is one of those where if I would have just focused on one person and the unhappy story behind them, but I have so many characters, how am I supposed to develop those characters? Just develop all of them from a happy standpoint in a dystopian world where everything's fucking crazy. I think everybody needs to be fucked up. Because when I think about it, you're smiling and you're laughing right now. I'm smiling, laughing. But we all have silent battles that nobody else knows about. So in comparison to the book, we all are having an unhappy story and hoping for a happy ending. You just reading about somebody's story. They may hide that every single day.
Yeah, we're all hoping for a happy ending. That's not the kind you're talking
But I think that this chapter is important because it's not only telling about that grief and those different morals and everything, but it's a building purpose. You can't just the resistance can't come out of nowhere.
It can't.
It has to be born and then built.
Oh. Well, I mean, good stories do that. There are a lot of bad stories where they just come out of nowhere.
It has to be born. It has to be built. Now that I'm thinking about it, and this is exclusive statement right here. This chapter is called The Newest Edition. I did a remaster of it, and I'm supposed to be remastering it one more time because I want to resize the book. So I think I'm going to change The Newest Edition to being called A Resistance Built. Because I think that it has to be born, which is the chapter before, and then it has to be built. And that's what this chapter is about. It's about building the resistance. And when you build a resistance, right now you have the leaders. There have to be some people in there that have importance.
You got Samuel the preacher and Jesse the fighter.
Now, I have a question for you, and I don't want to go too long over time. I do want to close out the show soon. But it was a very large toss-up under the leadership of this resistance. Should it be Samuel? Should it be Jesse? Who do you think it should be? Do you think the choice of who I chose was right? Why or why not?
I think the leader of this, so here's where I'll start. They both have different skills. Jesse's a man of action.
What are they, Liam Neeson? What do you mean they have a special set of skills? Okay, go ahead, I'm listening.
They both have different skills, not a special set of skills.
Okay, well, it still sounded like the same thing, Liam Neeson. And you have the Liam Neeson hat.
Is a personal person. He can recruit people. he's the guy that makes people believe in the cause, right? Jesse is the muscle. He's kind of the guy who gets things done. He takes action when action needs to be taken.
Is he the muscle or the secretary?
In my eyes, he's the muscle.
Well, that's the whole thing. Anybody can read this book, and it's how they perceive certain things in their eyes.
In my eyes, I would see him as the muscle. So the choice for a leader makes sense, right? Because when you think about who you chose makes sense. When you think about different leaders, right? It's the people that can inspire others into action, and we consider those leaders. You know, there are a lot of people who can go out and do things, right? That doesn't make you a leader. What makes you a leader is, can you inspire others to go out and do things? And that's just Samuel's gift. He's a prophet. He's a prophet from Michael Boone.
Well, the thing I like is that most films, dystopian world films, are just from the dystopian world perspective. We are all just living in the dystopian world. And this is so unique and different. And maybe I'm wrong. I can't think of any movie that's in comparison. And so if you can, throw it out there. If anybody that's watching live or even in the future can think of one, throw it out there to negate what I'm saying. But this is one where you don't have just the dystopian world. You have one that has the dystopian world and the utopian world, because their subway resistance world is supposed to be the utopian life. And they're just trying to survive. It's not even at really a point where they're fighting to destroy the dystopian world. They're just at a point where they're trying to build and survive away from it. And I don't think that's ever really been done, where you have just, it's not really a dystopian world movie, but it is, or story, but it is, or book, but it is. It's a little of both worlds, no pun intended.
I feel like there are probably some things out there like that where
name something.
Their own little piece of the pie is.
Can you think of one? Anybody that's watching live or anybody that sees pre-recorded?
Here's the thing. Here's what I'll say, and kind of just support it. The Hunger Games, in a way, is kind of what you're talking about, because when they're living in their own little sector, they're fine. They don't have problems with each other. It's just when the conflict arises,
I disagree.
They fight each other to survive.
I disagree, because they were in their own sector and happy, and when the Hunger Games was introduced, then shit became chaotic, and those districts started to die off, and just everybody, it just went to shit. It just was an evolution of becoming a dystopian world. It wasn't really a utopian world trying to survive amongst a dystopian world simultaneously.
Well, I'll say with the later groups, with the little resistance groups they built up, because every single one of these movies, like another one, what is it? Maze Runner, just like Maze Runner, just like
there was no utopian world within Maze Runner.
Their little pod was supposed to be their utopian world, even though they didn't make it that. But yeah, that's not. I'm not using that. I'm not using that as the example. I'm saying like movies like Maze Runner, like Divergent. That's what it's called. Allegiant, all that other stuff. That one is actually more closer to what we're talking about. Divergent, because they really didn't have problems with each other until they figured out this whole thing was a charade. Divergent. That's a good one too. But all of these kind of have like these resistance groups that build together and kind of come. They show that community of people coming together, kind of being that resistance, I guess I would say. But I don't know if I would just. I guess it's a utopia. I guess. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to end on this note with this question. You asked me, because this chapter is really geared towards relationship as well as a resistance building. No pun intended.
I'm no longer reporter E.
Look for the change on the chapter. What is your takeaway from the relationship, marriage aspect of this chapter? What is your takeaway from the message, the values, the things that were supposed to be said? Maybe something that you gained personally or that you think other people need to gain. That's kind of the note I want to end on.
The message that I would tell other people to take from this is to actually deal with your grief. Um, I think the reason that, as we were talking, that the trope of, you know, the main character kind of, you know, they get something happens to them, it's very grievous, and they move on. It's because that's what we do as humans, right? You know, there are a lot of tragic things
So you
that happen.
agree that we as people do the exact when shit happens, we kind of react. It might be a different, but it's still the same.
Yeah, I do agree. I never disagree with you.
Well, I hope that other people that are watching that see, because that's really the whole purpose of this book is I want people to change from that. You don't always have to be sad at a funeral. You have more times of their life, unless they died when they were a baby, unfortunately. You have more times of their life to celebrate than to be sad that they died, knowing that we're all going to die. And so the reaction of it just needs to be different. And we all die a certain way. You can't be heartbroken because one got hit by a car or one got murdered or one committed suicide. We all are going to have a certain different way that we die. Cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer. It's going to be different for everybody. And you can't be so sensitive towards that and react that same way. Be just as happy and celebrate life just as much when they're here as when they're gone.
Yeah, well, that's not exactly what I'd take you from it, but yes. I'm taking from it dealing with your grief, being okay to deal with your grief when things happen to you, and not necessarily having to bottle that up, right? That's kind of where I was going. It's just like, all these characters are self aware enough to understand that they're going through some stuff, and that, while Jesse is trying to build a resistance, and Stacy's trying to be a part of something that's bigger than herself, and John's doing John, I guess, being boozy in a motel room. We are all dealing with stuff, and it is okay, despite having personal things in your life, to take the time to deal with whatever grief you have. But I do agree with the message that you were saying. I'm just saying that's kind of this chapter alone. I think that is the message I would say people should take away from it is be okay to take the time to deal with your grief.
Because I was going to say, if you didn't understand or agree.
Oh, you're going to backhand me like that? You're gonna try to backhand me like that?
Pretty much a smack right up beside your head. Yes, pretty much. Wow. But no,
There's a special place for people like Carter.
Heaven.
Very special place for them.
Heaven. I mean, you got to ask.
No. We want to thank you guys.
On that note. And I am the legendary Michael Bowie. And this has been A Legend Talks.
Oh my gosh.
Ew. Well, and this has been A Legend Talks. Cut. And
I feel like that was a good one. And I feel like you like Reporter E. You don't